coming up on this Hall of Fame edition of Wrestling Life.
Some people have just that natural charisma, and he came out and he didn't have to say anything. It was his energy that was just amazing. When he was in that ring, it was poetry in motion. Like Jimmy Hart once said that the Bulldogs wrestled very snappish. Everything was very snappish, and it was everything was quick and
with purpose.
It's like it was the perfect blend, and his highly athletic gymnastic ability. I never saw anything like him.
Welcome to the Wrestling Life Hall of Fame, celebrating the careers and accomplishments of legendary squared circle talents.
Hello my friends, and welcome to this very special Hall of Fame edition of Wrestling Life with Ben Veal. Today we recognise and celebrate the life and legacy of a hugely talented performer who wowed fans globally with an innovative, explosive and high-flying style that would change the face of pro wrestling forever. Ahead of his time, this man left it all in the ring, and while he passed away in 2018 at the young age of 60, his stylistic influence can still be seen widely across the modern product today. Being inducted into the Wrestling Life Hall of Fame class of 2025 is, of course, the one and only Dynamite Kid Tom Billington. And joining me in the studio today to accept this award, it's my pleasure to welcome Michelle Billington, and to welcome back to the show, the Dynamite doll herself, Bronwyne Billington. Michelle, Bronwyne, welcome to the show. How are you both today?
We are doing great. I'm so excited to be here. The day is finally here, and I'm so happy to have my mom by my side today.
Oh, thanks for inviting us. We're so honored to be on your show today.
Such a pleasure. And you two are looking glam, I have to say.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. 9 a.m. here in Canada.
I'm so impressed. That is commitment. I love that.
Got to show up for my dad.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, Bronwyne, I mean, this is actually the third time that you and I have had a conversation, and a lot of that centered around your dad. You first were a guest on my Good Journeys podcast, and then more recently here on Wrestling Life. Michelle, obviously, it's the first time we've had a chance to speak. So I'd love to kick off really with, I guess, where this journey began. So take me back to kind of how you first met Tom and what drew you together in the first place.
Well, when I first moved to Calgary, I lived with my sister Julie and Bret. And Bret's brother Wayne Hart lived with Dynamite Kid. And I didn't know that because I was kayfabe. You say Queen's Park in England. But, we weren't let into the business, Julie and I. It was wrestling is a secret society at that time. Everything was kayfabe. So Bret asked me to return the iron. He borrowed to iron your clothes. He's like, oh, take this back to Wayne's. And it was about 7 blocks that he lived away from us. So I took the iron back. And when I knocked on the door, Dynamite Kid answered, and I was just shocked. I was like, oh my God, Dynamite Kid. Because at that time, Dynamite was wrestling Bret. And they were having like cage matches and all over the territory. So but when I was watching those matches, and I was like, I know I'm not supposed to, but that Dynamite Kid, wow, he's like a ping pong ball all over the ring. And he had a pretty sweet little butt on him too. So anyway, so yeah, I didn't think he would even look twice at me. At that time, I was working at a restaurant and trying out everything on the menu. They called me Moose because I got up to about 160 pounds. Okay. And I was like the same. My waist was the same width as Tom's. Because later I tried his pants on. Anyway, that's another story. But so I didn't think he would, want anything to do with me. But I was just so in awe of him, of his wrestling. And I gave him the iron, and I don't know what he thought of me. But I walked home in a daze, and I was like, Bret, did you know Dynamite Kid is living with your brother? And he's like, yeah, that's backstab and betrayal. I can't take it or something. But so they just kept me in the dark. But then at wrestling, Tom would come out of the dressing room once in a while and watch the matches, which he never did. And we would talk like surreptitiously, like to each other. So how's it going? And because there's all, we don't want Bret to know that I'm talking to the enemy. And then one day he goes, it's hard for me to come out here. Like, fans are bugging me. He goes, why don't you call me sometime? Because he knew I knew Wayne's phone number. So I did that night. I was like, hi. And he said, hi. And then, I don't know, we were just chit-chatting. Then later on, I was like, I really like you. And he's like, I really like you too. And I go, no, I'm like, no, I really like you. And he goes, I really like you. So it was just like two little kids. And then he asked me to go to the White Spot the next day. It was like a steakhouse. And we go the White Spot in his Cadillac. And I order, like, I really wanted to impress him with how well I could order from the menu. So I ordered filet mignon and lobster tail, and and it was like 1:00 in the afternoon because he had to wrestle at 4:00.
Oh gosh.
And then he didn't order anything, and I was like, aren't you hungry? And he goes, no, I'm on a strict diet. I'll just have this coffee and water. Later on, I find out he didn't have enough money. Like, if he would have ordered something, he wouldn't have had enough money to cover the bill. I was like, oh my God. Well, I didn't know that till like years later.
And did you eat all the food?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I ate all that food. Oh, then I'm like, and can I have a brandy Alexander? And I'll have, so it was just ridiculous. And then he let me drive the car back to Wayne's house. And I have big glasses. I'm really blind, but I had these, I didn't want to wear the glasses in front of him. So I'm driving down 9th Avenue, like just blind and really slow. And Tom doesn't have much patience for that sort of thing, but he was so patient, and I didn't know him that well yet. And I'm like, am I doing okay? And he's like, yeah, you're doing fine. But I wasn't. I was like,
was that one of Stu's
Mr.
Cadillacs?
Magoo, he called me Mr. Magoo.
You said it was a Cadillac? That's Stu's Cadillac?
No, it was your dad's Cadillac.
Oh, okay.
It was a Coupe de Ville, white with white with a red interior leather.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful.
How long had he been living in Canada by the time you two met?
Like a couple years.
Coming over from England, obviously that's a really big culture shock, especially at that time. Kind of, how was his relationship like coming into the giant Hart family and kind of getting to know Stu, and obviously then later Bret and everyone? But what was his relationship like with Stu?
Oh, very close. Stu really admired him. I mean, even when we separated, and I'd still like go up to Stu's with the kids, Stu would be like, have you heard of him, Dynamite? Yeah, he had short fuse. He took more goddamn bumps in one night than these guys did in their whole goddamn career.
That's a tremendous impression.
Oh, yeah.
She's great at impressions.
Yeah, he did. When he was a babyface, he would go up for the Sunday dinners as well, like when he first came over. And they would be like playing football. It's, Canadian football. Tom used to go, that's not fucking football. I guess football, soccer, or whatever for you guys. But,
right.
The football. So the Harts American football, yeah.
Yeah.
So they would be like out on the lawn, and Tom had never played, but it was sort of like rugby. Well, I don't know if you guys knew this, but before wrestling, Tom, he could have been a professional soccer player or more likely a professional rugby player. Okay. So any sport that
he was offered a contract with Wigan, whatever their team is. Is it yours or something?
Yeah, he chose wrestling. We still have his medals that he won when he was younger. But even in school, anything that he did, he would just be excellent at it,
Gymnastics,
especially the rings.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good with the rings, the upper body strength. But anyway, so this American football, here's the Harts, and they asked Julie and I to play, and I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll just watch, and then like the next week, because I'm like, I'm not that athletic. I was the last person they would pick on a team when their kids are picking teams. So then we were watching, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're acting like this is Super Bowl Sunday. Like, and they're like, get it, oh, you missed it. And like people are diving in the bushes for these. I'm like, I am not like that kind of person. But anyway, when Tom played, he was excellent. He was the quarterback. He was
just instantly
instantly good at it.
So when you meet him, and obviously you drop off the iron, or you pick up the iron. I can't remember which one you said now.
I dropped it off.
You dropped off the iron. You've seen him wrestle already. So you've been to Stampede shows with Julie and Bret, have you already? And you've seen him in the ring as Dynamite Kid before you know him as Tom.
Yes.
What were your impressions of him? Because obviously we look back as wrestling fans and we look back at, as we'll talk about today, this kind of legacy and the influence that the Dynamite Kid has had on so many. Can you remember what it was like when you first saw him competing? Because he was so different from everyone else out there.
Well, it was his energy, right? Like some people have just that natural charisma, but he came out and he didn't have to say anything. It was his energy that was just amazing. And, when he was in that ring, it was poetry in motion. Like, I remember Jimmy Hart once said that the Bulldogs wrestled very snappish. Everything was very snappish. And everything was quick and
with purpose.
Yeah. And even Bret would say, the English style of wrestling was, kind of funny to the American style wrestling, because American style was just more mat wrestling, chain wrestling. But the British wrestling was just, more jumping and rolling and diving. But Tom had something different. Like he added to that because he was in Japan, because he wrestled with people that were in Japan that had wrestled Mexico. So he had that Mexican style, the Japanese strong style, and the American mixed with the British. So I think just for him, he was able to combine the four. Yeah. So you can't really say, oh, it's his British style wrestling. It's like it was the perfect blend, and his highly athletic gymnastic ability. I never saw anything like him. And no. I don't think I ever have, except his nephews.
Yeah.
But Tom Billington is exactly like Tom. Like when I met him, I was even kind of flustered.
Yeah.
Like my breath was taken away. I was like, this was like deja vu. It was just like meeting Tom all over again. And he was trained by Marty Jones. So he has that same technical background. And he's getting around the world now. So, yeah, he's more and more becoming exactly like his uncle.
Yeah, I mean, the last time Bronwyn and I spoke, that was just after Tom had appeared at an AEW show in Calgary. But I was going to ask you that. It must be so strange to see, almost a mirror image of your late husband. It's so odd, isn't it?
Even their personalities, like they're very polite and quiet and just all about like very business in the locker room, just all about the wrestling. And he's so much like my dad. It's crazy.
Am I fair to describe Tom as quite introverted, kind of away from the ring, quite quiet and kind of kept himself to himself? Because he never really felt like he fit the mold of a sports entertainer. Dynamite Kid was very much a professional wrestler, not a cartoon character wrestler, as in what the WWF became. Didn't ever seem like the kind of person that necessarily would go out into an arena full of people, but in front and perform. But he was just so talented at what he did as an artist in that ring.
Yes, and when you said he was a cartoon character, you reminded me of, in Japan, Tiger Mask was a cartoon character. They based him off a cartoon character. So Tom was kind of the nemesis to that cartoon character, right?
Yeah.
So, and he loved being a bad guy, and he hated being a good guy, because for him, his good guy, because when he was a good guy in Stampede, he always had that edginess about him. He still had that, I'm not signing your autograph, and he could take care of himself with any man. Even Bret had said that, like he wasn't scared of any man, any size. And I saw him like even, get into it with Duke Myers, who was used to be in Folsom Prison, and he was about 6'3" or 6'4", Duke Myers. Wow. He was all drunk and had a baseball bat, and Tom's like, let's go. And I was like, no, guys, don't fight here. But anyway, Duke actually backed down because he respected Tom for even wanting to go toe to toe.
The thing about Tom, I mean, obviously very much the antithesis of a cartoon character, but when the British Bulldogs go to WWF, which is how so many people will have been introduced to the Dynamite Kid, obviously the Vince McMahon stamp goes onto them, and they do become these larger than life characters with the sequins and the cape and the dog and everything that went into that package. And it never looked like Dynamite was particularly comfortable in that position with those kind of promos and being in that spotlight. It felt like, it looked as a fan like all he ever really wanted to do was just go out and work a match and put on the best match in the show. Did you have conversations with him about the kind of creatively what he was moved into when he went to the WWF?
Well, you know, when he first went, he was the only one that Vince wanted.
Right.
And when he first went, we had 2 giant capes made because Vince said he wanted a Dynamite Kid cape, so it was to the floor. We had a purple lame one and then a red lame with it had a vest built into it. But he didn't mind it because it was pretty light. But he hated being on the road without his family. Like Stampede Wrestling, once you survive the territory, because it was one of the hardest territories to do. Like you were driving, I think you had one day off. You had Sunday off. That was it. Some of the shows were really close, but I mean, you were getting in the van at 10 in the morning to wrestle at 7 at night in Regina, Saskatchewan, like just a straight road. Everybody like on Fred Flintstone. I don't know if you guys get the Flintstones over there, but we have the same tree go by.
Yeah.
Davey's like, where's the castles? I was like, there's no castles here, Davey. Just a little bush once in a while. But anyway, you'd wrestle and then you'd come home, straight home, and it was 6 in the morning, and you go to bed and get up and you got to go wrestle again. You got to be at the Mohawk at 3:00 to make another show, probably closer by. But it was tough, those road trips.
Yeah.
Title Run Toys Series 1. Dangerous Danny Davis. Wrath. Juventud Guerrera. Ernest the Cat Miller. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Coming to the ring soon.
And I guess also, I mean, a lot of the guys in Stampede in the kind of around about 1984 could start to see where things were going. I mean, it happened so quickly in terms of Vince McMahon's dominance, but you could see those early signs that wrestling was changing, couldn't you?
So my point about the road trip though is they did things to, just to gel and to have fun, and sometimes the pranks got a little crazy, but he missed that when he went to New York. It was, he knew some people from Japan, but there wasn't that same like whole van of heel wrestlers like singing on top of Old Smoky and drinking beers, and he loved being in the heel van. So then he got together with Davey and said, I don't want to work for New York. Let's go to Japan. Let's go. And they went to Japan, and then Vince came there because Vince had seen Tom. We drove down to the States, like through Sweetgrass to Portland, so Tom could fly to New York so that he wouldn't get stopped at the border. Every time he tried to go from Calgary to Mexico or, somewhere in the States, somebody would phone and say that he was, going to be wrestling somewhere. Wow. So we drove down there, and he's like, oh, take my wrestling things out of my bag. And he put them in Duke Myers, and his wife are the people who drove us. So we put his wrestling gear in there in Duke's bag in case customs went through our bags. And then when he got to New York, he didn't have his wrestling gear. And you could see Tom wrestling Tiger Mask in Madison Square Gardens, and Vince McMahon sees him for the first time, and he's wearing...
Was it Junkyard Dogs gear?
It was Special Delivery Jones.
Wow.
I think it was S.T. Jones.
Oh. The red trunks?
The red trunks. And he goes, luckily, SD lives in the territory, and he worked on those shows quite often. So he borrowed his trunks. All he had was his wrestling boots. and his raps. So, yeah, he was like, oh, my big debut, Madison Square Gardens, and I had to borrow someone's fucking trunks.
That's a crazy world of wrestling, isn't it?
Still made it.
So anyway, so when he went to New York on his own, Vince had already, and you can hear, if you watch that match, Vince McMahon goes, I've never seen a Dynamite Kid. So then he saw him. So he always remembered him. So when he was the owner of WWF, he knew who Tom was. So he wanted him bad. And then Tom did not like, and plus Tom was like working opening matches, which is fine, but he wasn't used to that. And he was like, I'm getting $50. And he was like, I went all that way and they're only giving me $50. And back then you had to pay for your own transportation, your own hotel, your food. You would only, have it as a tax write-off. So he's like, I'm going to Japan. I'm going to JP, me. And then that's when, Vince flew there to convince them to come to him.
I think what's really interesting, if you look at, and I'm going to ask you about this, Bronwyn, because I was going to ask you a bit about kind of how you feel when you look back at kind of WrestleMania 2, obviously looking at your dad at that moment. What's really interesting is I recently had Keith Elliott Greenberg as a guest on the show. Now, Keith was obviously writing for WWF Magazine all through the period of the late 80s, early 90s, knew Vince very well. He said to me that Vince McMahon never lived in the present moment. He always lived 5 or 10 years down the line. So he was talking about having a network, in the late 80s, having his own WWF network. And I think you can see there, to give Vince McMahon his due on that, you can see that he had obviously seen in Dynamite Kid the future of wrestling and how the business was going to evolve. But obviously Dynamite's style was such a move beyond where the WWF product was. I mean, this was really the era of, Bob Backlund would just transition to Hulk Hogan, but this was very much kind of, we were used to this very, very slow, plodding style of wrestling. We hadn't seen matches like the explosiveness that Dynamite Kid brought to the ring. And so we see that with how quickly Vince is able to kind of evolve the wrestling product. I mean, between WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 2, it's like night and day in terms of presentation and production. By the time that WrestleMania 2 rolls around, obviously the British Bulldogs are in the WWF, not only are in the World Wrestling Federation, but they're in this star-studded spot. So you've got Ozzy Osbourne and Leo Albano in their corner. They win the WWF tag team titles. Like, it's a really, really big moment for them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in a moment, Michelle, obviously being there with Tom. But for you, Bronwyn, obviously so much of this you've had to, you've had to learn your dad's history by looking back at all this footage that you've got of him. How is it when you look back at a match like that, when it was such a big moment for him and Davey Boy?
I think it's definitely one of the largest moments of his career that stands out to me. Having someone like Ozzy Osbourne by your side must have felt really cool for him. And I guess the story was actually that Ozzy Osbourne reached out to Vince McMahon saying, hey, I want to manage these guys. So Ozzy Osbourne saw something in them. And they're like, he was like, these British guys represent, I don't know if he was a wrestling fan, but, he
must be. He's been involved for so long. If he wasn't then, he definitely is now.
Yeah. And I see him retweet like almost every WrestleMania season, a picture with my dad.
He's made enough royalties off wrestling in the last 30 years. I'm sure he's a wrestling fan by now.
Yeah, and I think that that was just a really large moment for them, and they made such a difference in the tag team division. They really brought it forward, and people, study their matches and talk about that tag team division still to this day, like the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs. They really, really put their stamp on it at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally just had Demolition on a couple of weeks ago, and Bill and Barry were both saying that their favourite opponents, really the Hart Foundation, British Bulldogs, Strikeforce, they loved.
And I feel like their gimmicks too weren't far off like who they really were. Like they looked like thick bulldogs, even if my dad didn't like the big heavy cape, it all looked like such a complete package. Like, it made sense. They're cousins. They're good looking British guys. The dog was just perfect.
And I guess it must be really, I mean, we've talked about kind of losing our fathers several times when we've recorded together, and we've both got quite emotional when we've talked about this. There's a difference, I guess, between your dad and my dad, which is I don't have it. I have like 10 seconds of video footage of my dad, which thankfully I grabbed with him and my first son just messing around at Christmas. That's the only video I have of my dad. I wish I had more. I must be at least comforted. I know this is your dad when he was a lot younger, but it must be quite special that there's a lot of your dad captured. And I know that you've said to me before, like through managing his social media accounts, every so often someone will send you a picture that you've never seen before of your dad.
Yeah, I actually just made friends on my dad's social media account with the current Tiger Mask. He's the 4th Tiger Mask.
Right.
He's been sending me so many pictures I haven't seen, and I'm like, this is so great, and it means so much to me. And he actually told me he's going to send me a mask. So I'm like super excited about that.
That's cool.
They're I guess they sell them. They'll get new ones every so often, and they sell them, and they're very expensive.
Yeah.
So he said he would give me one. So I'm super honored. What was the original question you asked me? Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
It was less a question and more an observation, really. Just about
yeah, and about being able to watch my dad on video and stuff. It is nice because I don't have any, some people have like a voicemail recording or something like that. I don't have that on my dad. I wish that I did. Wish I had kept a voice message he sent me or something. But I'm able to go on YouTube and watch promos, and I can still hear his voice, and that's very special. So I'll never forget what his voice sounds like. And I can always still hear in my head his accent saying my name. It's something I can't.
Can you do an impression of that?
No. No, I can't. I am awful at it.
Bronwyne.
Yeah, kind of.
Bronwyne.
And I know, obviously, Michelle, we've talked about Davey. Like, I know, obviously, their relationship didn't end on good terms, but in the early days of the Bulldogs, what was that relationship like? Dynamite and Davey Boy like?
They were very much like brothers, and Tom was always like the older brother, letting him know what he should or shouldn't do. Like when they were he would say, when they were with Vince McMahon, and Vince was, they were talking contracts or whatever, and Davey's such a sweet man, and he didn't like confrontations. He wasn't really that guy, right? So of course, when Vince is saying, "Oh, you guys, I want to do this," he'd be like, "Yeah." And so when they came out of the meeting, Tom would be, "Stop fucking saying yeah! Stop saying yeah!" It's like, so he was like the older brother trying to always be in charge. He was the captain of the team, he would say. When they came home, like even when Bret and Jim came home, it's like they would see each other so much on the road. They didn't really want to see each other when they came home, So some people would think, "Oh, you guys are always hanging." It's like, no, we would like all meet as a group, like at Stu's, like on Sunday dinners. But we all did our own thing.
I think that's one of the things that as wrestling fans, we sometimes overlook that, but this is a job. It might be a job that you're incredibly passionate about, and it might blur the lines between, pleasure and vocation, but at heart, it's a job and they're work colleagues. And when you're away, aren't you? And I think it's really healthy to have that boundary and that line.
Yeah. Well, they're on the road so much. So when they're home, of course, they all had kids. They all wanted to be home with their wife and kids.
And that's something that you've said before, Bronwyn, which really echoed me, because you said whenever your dad was home, he was home. And that's your lasting memory of him when you were a little girl, is that he was present. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, especially in this day and age when I beat myself up all the time. I know a lot of parents my age do, but we're not really present because we're always distracted on our phones, or always half working, half at home. Very powerful, actually, when he was home. I know the times were very limited, but that you did get all of him when he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he spoiled it rotten. And his favorite thing to do was like to go to Banff for the weekend, and we always had to have a room with open fire, like a fireplace where you could put logs on the fire and burn your own wood. Even if it was summertime and the air conditioner was on, he still wanted that open fire. We ended up buying a house with like 2 big fireplaces. because he liked to make his weenie burgers in there.
I want to ask, we talk about WrestleMania. So obviously a year later, we have WrestleMania 3. But obviously by the time that Dynamite's performing in front of that incredible crowd, that history-making night, he's part of this 6-man tag with Tito Santana against the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis. But by the point that he's at that show, he's suffered this incredibly serious back injury, and what clearly wasn't in any condition to perform. And these days, there's no way that I'm sure that would kind of go ahead. It would be allowed. I can't even imagine the pain that he was working in. And it's incredible that he managed to kind of gut it out and have any presence at that match and be there for that show. What can you remember about that time period, Michelle, after he kind of suffered that injury and then had to drop the titles? And
I even before his injury, his back was bothering him from when we lived in Portland, Oregon, before Bronwyn was born. He wouldn't say how bad his back was. He might say, "Me back is sore." If it was me, I've had a bad back, and I was I feel so much. I feel so connected to Tom when I have an injury. I had an injury on my shoulder, and it was just. I was teaching phys ed and lifting things all the time, and I had tendonitis in there, and it was like a knife. I bump into the wall and be I want to cry, or somebody would say, "Can we get some hula hoops?" And I'm like, "What?" I just want to bite their head off, because I was in such pain at that moment, and I would just think back how much pain Tom was in, with his back, with his shoulder, and he never would say. He would just suffer silently. He was a very humble man too. That's what I wanted to say. When you say, with Ozzy Osbourne and all that, he would be uncomfortable if people would come up to him and say how great you are and this and that. Because he was trained, this is a business. You have a job. You're not any better than anybody else. Everyone has their slot in the show. Everybody's a part of that show, from the referee to the ring crew, just as important. So yeah, he was very humble.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously we're having to do this award posthumously, and obviously you lost him on his 60th birthday of all days. Do you think that in those kind of last years of his life, he recognised actually how respected he was within the business and how much of a influence he'd been to wrestling? Because I know he was detached from it for a number of years, but I think you said to me, Bronwyn, that you watched some DVDs of him with his old matches, and I know he kept in touch with Bret. Do you think he realised actually just how much he had actually changed wrestling?
I hope he did. I think, that time in the 90s in England when he had seen Eddie Guerrero, Mick Foley, Chris Jericho was there, all these up-and-coming names that absolutely idolized him and was taking pictures with him, and they're all just so excited. And so I hope that it at least made him realize he was still talked about. They all respected him, and he made such a difference in the business today. But later on, he didn't really have internet or anything like that. So I don't know how much he really, really knew what a difference he made. But I hope he had an inkling.
Yeah, because there's so many, from Eddie Guerrero to of course Chris Benoit, who modelled a lot of
Chris Benoit
in rim work on him, to Bryan Danielson. So many have cited the Dynamite Kid as an inspiration. You can still see a lot of his work today in so many of the roster on AEW, for example. Those snap suplexes you mentioned, we've got so used to the pacing now that really was a Dynamite Kid stamp. But the other thing that obviously with Dynamite, you can't talk about Dynamite without talking about his injury in his later years. And there is obviously a cautionary tale there. And there's something that obviously the wrestling business has somewhat learned from. We thankfully seem to be seeing less career-ending injuries and less premature deaths in wrestling than we certainly used to. Still obviously a problem, but doesn't seem to be quite the same level. I mean, the era that Tom worked in, the pressure they were under, the lifestyles they all led, so many of those guys in the 80s, I mean, it really did take its toll, didn't it? And Tom, of course, was one of the real casualties of such a hard lifestyle, and also such an incredibly intense ring style.
Yeah, I would say, after his back injury, that, the drugs, the prescription drugs that he had to take to even, like when I say he was in pain and he wasn't telling me about it, I mean, he must have been taking enough to not complain. But, even like complaining, like he would complain, like didn't want to carry the bag. His Halliburton had the belt in it and the cape because of his back. It wasn't that it was, too heavy to carry. It was just, and to lug around the dog and, just their bags. And thank God for Davey. Davey did a lot of the lifting, like when his back was getting worse. But he still wrestled. You can't tell that he's like, I would look at those matches and we know how much pain he was in. He just never sold that,
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, yeah. And another thing is he would never work in the ring like on any kind of medication or drinking. Like he was really strict about that. And then when things started to change after the Rougeau punch, I mean, when you think of how hard you have to be hit to lose, your front teeth, top and bottom, 45 stitches, Davey, God bless him, was always the one to phone me with the bad news. So whenever I picked up the phone and it was Davey, because remember, we didn't have cell phones in those days. No. Whenever I heard Davey's voice, I'm like, oh my God, now what happened? He's the one who told me that, Tom's back went. And I'm like, it went? Like, I knew he had a sore back, but I didn't know it was to the point where it went. Like his fourth and fifth lumbar, the discs were shredded and entangled in the spinal cord when they opened him up. But he phoned me and said, "Yeah, we're flying him home on the next plane. We bought 4 seats so that he could lay down." And I'm like, I just couldn't comprehend, like, why he can't even move, like he's laying on. And I met him at the hospital. But that, recovering from that, and he was in the hospital. They were telling him he had these little exercises to do, like he had to, push his hand on this side and turn his back while laying down. And then after they left, he's like, what kind of fucking shit is that? Me back's not going to get stronger with that. What the fuck? That's what he, like, he went to the gym and he started doing lower back exercises, like where you're hanging and you're lifting yourself like this. And I was like, I don't know. The doctor said, and the doctor said you shouldn't. But he is he has the record in Canada for going to work back to a physical job the quickest after that operation. They told him he shouldn't wrestle. They said his wrestling career was over. Mr. Billington, like, he'd never wrestle again. And it's like, I'm going to show them, prove them all wrong. And if you look at those matches afterwards, he still gave as much as he did as before. And he took his trainer, Ted Betley, to Madison Square Gardens. Like after Ted's wife died, Tom wanted to cheer him up. And he's like, they always reminded me of Rocky and his manager. Yeah. Let her train you then. But Ted always said, I'd rather Tom be with a girl like me, right? I'd rather Tom be with you than a gang of lads.
Yeah.
Like, true, yeah. I don't know if that's a compliment, but but anyway, he took Ted to Madison Square Gardens, and that was a really big deal for him. But Ted said, Tommy, you don't need to fly anymore. You paid your dues. But Tom's like, no, I still have to hear him go, even if there's 10 people in the building.
I'm Mark Merrill, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
So his quality, what he put into that match did not diminish, even though his body was. And then after that Rougeau punch, I mean, imagine that, getting on a plane to France after getting punched like that. Can you imagine the concussion from that?
Yeah, crazy.
So I think Rougeau's punch just, sent that CTE into overdrive, because his personality changed after that. It was already starting to diminish, the impulsive behavior, when he was recovering from his back, we went for a walk around our property. It was really foggy out, and, it had just rained, and he was being really open about his feelings, which is very guarded. When you say introvert, I think it has to do with his being Northern England. I think it's more a cultural thing. But he was introverted though. He did like to be alone and be with the animals. He would be a backyard farmer and stuff, had turkeys and he liked to sit with the turkeys. But he told me on this walk, he's like, yeah, I used to have ferrets, and he had what's that called? An allotment, where you could have your animals on a shared piece of land in the community. So he had his little ferrets in there, and he would like to spend time. You know what? I forgot my point of this story.
We were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying about personality change, and I mean that.
Oh, that he opened up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Here we go. Back on track.
No, but I think that's an important thing about, obviously, the CTE, what we know about concussions today, what we know about what it can do to someone.
But he told me at that time, and he goes ever since I've had a few hits in the head. He goes, it's hard to shut off when I get mad. He goes, it's like a switch. I cannot shut it off. He goes, it can take hours, sometimes a day, days, for him to get out of his anger. So he had no control of those strong emotions at that point. I didn't realize it then. I was just saying, you need to quit drinking, and he always drank and took some prescription pills because of the pain. So when his back was done, I'm like, oh, okay, now you can quit drinking. But it wasn't just the drinking. It was the prescription drugs. It was the road, things to come up, things to go down, some things to go to sleep.
Yeah, the lifestyle.
So I think after the back operation, and he went back onto the road, and they worked even harder. Like it's not like you got a break. Like, and we're talking about men have trouble finding things in the first place. Sorry about that. I know it sounds sexist, but now we have GP, yay. But back then, like, we had to go buy a map and, like read it and like, where are we? And you have to orient yourself. And he and I were lost in East LA for a while because, he wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop and get a map.
Like, no, we'll figure it out. Oh.
Yeah, I did. We did that on our honeymoon. Actually, we ended up getting lost going around like Compton and Englewood because I refused to get a sat nav.
Did you survive it? Did you survive it? Your relationship survived it?
Just about. Yeah. I think we were almost divorced within 48 hours of being married. When I had to drive. I drove back to LAX an hour and a half later to then purchase the sat nav that I had said an hour and a half before I didn't need because I was happy with a map. So I get it. Yeah. You're not being sexist. It is us.
Can you imagine going all over the United States, getting to the airport, and then you got to find your way. You got to rent a car. You got to find an arena. Sometimes you were just at a city close enough to the, maybe a 2-hour drive after that. It was brutal. And then sometimes he took me on the road with him and he goes, well, this isn't too bad of a trip, but we're going east to west coast at first. And that's difficult. And I'm like, it's a piece of cake. But it was difficult. I was like, what? Like, when are we going to eat? And back then, the airports weren't like full of food and shopping and Wi-Fi and, all that. There was like a chili stand, like a chili dog stand. That's what we ate. That's what the Matilda ate, that poor dog. Chili dogs. Because you're not going to lug around a big bag of dog food.
No.
So you can imagine how frustrating that would be to do that every day.
Yeah. And just the effect that that whole lifestyle has on you. And one of the reasons where it was really on my heart when I was looking at, who to name in this first class of a new Hall of Fame. I felt a huge amount of responsibility to do this and to do this right. And a very large influencing factor for me with the inclusion of the Dynamite Kid was everything I've come to know about him through getting to know Bronwyn and through reading Dynamite and Davey. So Stephen Bell's book. Stephen's a good friend of mine. I think I've put this book over a lot of times. I'll do it once more now because this is a tremendous book into both the ups and the downs of this professional wrestling business that we as fans love so much, and the reality of the human beings behind this business. And I think it's very easy in celebrity culture to form an opinion of someone, but when you only hear the bad, and obviously in the 90s and in the early 2000s, I heard a lot of bad about the Dynamite Kid. And it's in recent years when I've really focused on the good, because I think it's also a growing up thing. You realize that there's shades of grey to every situation, and it's very hard to know what's going on inside someone's head. And especially as men, we're not very, very good at talking about mental health or things we're struggling with. And I just don't think it's as black and white as people can kind of look at a person and say, this person wasn't a good person, this person was a good person. Clearly, from hearing you talk about him today, from hearing all the memories Bronwyn has shared, there is a brilliant man there, and undoubtedly an incredible wrestler. And that's kind of what I wanted to celebrate with this first class, as someone who hasn't got enough of their dues. I know obviously you were invited to the Hall of Fame at 2300 last year. You've got this now. You got your trophy behind you. Hopefully,
yeah.
There it is.
I love it so much. It's like such a good quality plaque.
You're very welcome. You've got to find a place for it now.
I will. Yes.
And hopefully this paves the way, I don't know, but one day potentially to a Hall of Fame induction for the British Bulldogs as a team, or Dynamite in his own right. But
I think so. It's all the momentum we need, just moving forward, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add too that, maybe these negative things that are said, and I know even our close friends and family have been, online saying some negative things sometimes. Like, the one thing that really bugs me when they say he had a little man syndrome, and I was like, are you kidding me? Dynamite Kid, when he walked in the room, he was the biggest man, like bar none. And he didn't even have to say anything. It was just like when he walked in the ring. I can't explain it, but he just had an aura about him. And, and he never, like I said, he was humble, and he didn't, like some people, like, maybe puff out their chest and, but it wasn't like that for him.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for doing this for the family. Everything positive that comes our way, like he's so justly deserves this. When they talk about negative things that he did, or I know, like, even after his back operation and the concussions, the CTE was getting worse, and then that Rougeau I think just put him over the edge there was no coming back from it. And I'm so glad now, though, that we're bringing CTE awareness to everyone, the signs of depression. I lost my own brother at 29 years old to suicide. And I know men don't talk about their emotions, their mental state. So Tom didn't talk about his back being sore. He wouldn't talk about his mental state. I know he did have a best friend, Joe Cimino, who also passed recently in last September. But God bless Joe. He's there wrestling with Tom now, so that's awesome. But even, it's just our culture back then, it was such a stigma. So I'm so glad that it's coming forward and we can discuss this. I know even as a teacher and a coach, we have programs that we have to go through and be certified for, and recognizing that if a child has a head injury or an athlete has a head injury, they are not to return until they have a doctor's note. And so I was really happy to see that, but I still see coaches let it slide because that's their top player.
Well, before we wrap up, I was just going to ask about Tom's relationship with Bret, because I understand that obviously they're very close in Stampede and with WWF and for your family. And then I know Bret would visit Tom a few times in the UK in his later years, and then they would keep in touch via, I think there's a photo in the book of them like keeping in touch via Skype or Zoom. It probably would have been Skype back then, wouldn't it? But how did that kind of relationship evolve as they both got older and as Tom's health deteriorated?
Well, actually, it was when I was there visiting, I brought a laptop. That was, I think, my second time there. Yeah. And I got them to Skype. And the service was terrible because my dad didn't have internet. So I had to go buy a little like Wi-Fi pack thing at the mall. It was what I did every time I went. I figured it out how to have Wi-Fi because I couldn't survive at my dad's house without it. But so I got him to Skype my dad, and the service, it was very choppy, but it was super cute. And I took that photo of them Skyping. And I think that was the only time they did that. But sometime after that, Bret was in England. I think he was with, who was he with? He might have been there the same time as Harry or something. And he visited my dad one last time. So he did see him in his later years one last time. So that was really nice. But they didn't really have a way to keep in touch. And at that point, my dad wasn't very verbal, couldn't talk very much. So
I know that each year you celebrate Tommy Day, which of course is both a birthday and the day that Tommy passed away. And I know that's a special day for you, isn't it? That you all get together as a family and celebrate that. I mean, in one beautiful way, and I can say this having lost my dad, and his birthday and his day of passing are 5 days apart. I mean, at least it groups it into a day. That is at least there's only one painful day to get through a year rather than two. So I have 2 anniversaries a year to wrap my head around. But I mean, pretty just absolutely incredible that he passes away on the same day as his 60th birthday.
Seemed very dynamite of him.
Yeah.
We look at it as a positive thing. Like we celebrate Tommy Day as a day of getting together and talking about him. And what he has done.
I usually like to have fish and chips, just something kind of British.
Yeah. And that's what it should be. I mean, we have I know the show is called Wrestling Life, but I mean, the reality is like death is unavoidable for all of us. It's all coming for us one day. And we do have quite a hard relationship with death in society, but actually there is that point of let's celebrate the life that was lived and the lives that were touched during that time. And that's kind of a large part of what this Hall of Fame is about, is celebrating people's impact during their time in wrestling. And I just kind of wanted to wrap up really with kind of a parting thought for both of you, really, in terms of what is Tom's legacy, not necessarily as a wrestler, but as a person, as a father. Like, just a few words to finish up on Tom's life and his legacy.
He would love to be known as the one who put his all into everything and never gave up. So he's very persistent. I think he was like the top dog because he had the top drive.
I'm going to go a different route this time and just say that my dad has set a standard for me of like how men should treat me. And, he treated me like his little princess and always just did everything to protect me. I'm going to cry now. And so I just have a standard of like being that daddy's girl, and I'll never forget like that, the love that he had for me. And sorry, I'm getting emotional. I just really, really love my dad. And yeah, I'll always carry him with me and feel him near me.
I'd like to thank you and the fans for this honor of this award. Like, it means so much to me and my kids and our grandchildren and future grandkids. So we have a lot of Tommies and Thomasinas coming up in the world. So you just watch out, world.
Yes, and I thank you so much too. Like I said, this only leads towards everything we're working for to continue my dad's legacy. And that's just been my goal the whole time.
Well, you're doing an incredible job. I'm sure you're incredibly proud, Michelle, of your daughter, and what a great job Bronwyne's doing to continue the legacy, forge her own wrestling path, and also keep Dynamite's legacy alive.
Yeah, I am so proud of her, and I know her dad is so proud of her too.
Thank you.
Well, before I make you cry anymore, I'll try not to anymore. Last thing really is social media. Anyone who isn't following the Dynamite Kid currently, because obviously you've created these incredible channels, which are kind of like mini time capsules, aren't they? You're always posting these wonderful, whether it's press clippings or old photos from Japan or little moments from personal life. It's always like I'm seeing great new pictures of Dynamite Kid and the Bulldogs. Where can people find you? And also, if they have a hidden relic from your dad's wrestling life to share with you, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, on Instagram, I have the account. It's official Dynamite Kid. Any other links you need for my dad are under my Linktree link on the Instagram. And my personal one is Dynamite Doll, Bronwyne Jewel. I don't know which one. I think you can look up either. And I also have a Linktree on there with all my links. So anything, any merchandise, anything like that, it's all going to be on there. Awesome.
Well, that's it for today. It's a huge honor to do this. I'm so glad we could do this. I'm so glad that award is pride of place now, and it's gone to a great home and very much deserved. Thank you so much to both of you for being here for a very, very special induction for the late, great Dynamite Kid Tom Billington. On the subject of thanks, I always have to thank my producer Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Productions, who always brings wrestling life to life. And thank you to my audience. But the main thing, obviously, is thank you to you, Michelle and Bronwyne, for being here today to accept the award and for such a lovely conversation.
Thank you, Ben. You're the best.
Thanks.
One does try. So we'll be back soon. In the meantime, please help the show to grow if you can. Subscribe, like, review, all that good stuff. And you join the conversation using hashtag WrestlingLifePod with your memories and contribute to today. That's it for today. Be good to each other. Pay it forward if you can. Do something to make someone else smile. I've been Ben Veal. This has been Wrestling Life. I'll see you soon. Bye.